Meta liberation. We've heard this term thrown out so much in My Hero, but what does it actually mean? During the school festival arc, we hear General Criminal begin his speech of heroes and villains. Here, he begins talking about the great heroes like All Might, Crimson Riot, and Brave, as well as the great villains like All For One, the Peerless Thief, and Destro, leader of the Meta Liberation Army. And then before the Endeavor vs. High-End fight, we see Teruo Hazukashi, a man tired of being at the rungs of society, tired of being a bootlicker, ready to rise up for liberation. Until of course he's stopped by Hawks in an instant. But this man was inspired to action by the book Meta Liberation Army, Destro's own memoirs that recently saw a resurgence in popularity after a new reprinting. Who is this mysterious villain Destro? What were the goals of the Meta Liberation Army of the past, and how will it affect the future of this quirk-filled society? We're going to dive into this and so much more. But first, a quick spoiler warning. We're going to be diving into some material that goes up to chapter 246 in the manga, which should be about the ending of season 5 for the anime. Chikara Yotsubashi was born in a time when quirks were still largely new, and society was figuring out how they fit in. Back then, they referred to them as meta abilities, and they largely faced discrimination for their differences. Yotsubashi had one of these meta abilities, and drew the ire of society against him and his mother. She spoke out to protect him, saying that they need to accept him and that this was just a quirk of my child. Let the world be a place where my child can live freely. But she would never see that society because an anti-meta mob would kill her in cold blood. She became a martyr for reform by the government. They enacted legislation to combat this new chaotic world of meta abilities, claiming a meta ability is just another trait of the individual, nothing but a quirk, which is why we refer to them now as quirks. But this legislation in the eyes of many didn't address the problem. By enacting new laws that only allowed heroes to freely use their quirks, many felt the natural abilities were being suppressed, and they demanded freedom. Among those was the very child of the woman who was murdered. Yotsubashi, now grown, took on the name Destro, for he wanted to destroy the status quo of society. While this movement garnered a lot of support, some dismissed it as acts of terrorism, and criticized it for getting innocent civilians caught in the crossfire. Eventually, the army was brought down, and Destro, along with the many others from the movement, were imprisoned. While in prison, Destro wrote his ideology of meta liberation into an autobiography entitled The Meta Liberation War, and soon after completion, he committed suicide. He would live on through these words as it would become pretty popular and even getting several reprintings, and his legacy would also be carried on by his son, which he had in secret. Rikiya Yotsubashi, also known as Re-Destro, was raised in secret, away from his father's name, brought up in an environment that viewed Destro as a messiah. As he grew up, he slowly gathered more and more influence to bring back his ideas of meta liberation once again. He gained control of the Detnerat company as CEO and president, a lifestyle support company, and surrounded himself with an Illuminati-like group of powerful people. Tomoyasu Chikazoku, skeptic, board member of the Feel Good Ink Company, providing a vast surveillance network at their fingertips. Koku Hanabata, trumpet, political leader of the Hearts and Minds Party, opening up the world of political influence behind the scenes. Chitose Kizuki, curious, executive director of Shuwasa Publishing, the same publishing company that spread reprints of the Meta Liberation War across Japan. With this network of powerful and well-resourced individuals, the new Meta Liberation Army was able to spread its message and even take over the city of Deka, growing their numbers to over 100,000 people. Through the actions of the League of Villains, this organization is more of a shell of its former glory. If you want to go more into this, I recommend the Meta Liberation Army arc, as well as the Paranormal Liberation War arc that follows. These might be two of the best arcs in the entire series of My Hero Academia, so go check them out. With the new Meta Liberation Army taking a backseat in the story, does this mean that the ideology is completely gone from here? I don't think so. At its core, Meta Liberation is about freeing governmental control over one's quirk and allowing them to live how they wish. This is an incredibly basic concept, and I wouldn't be surprised if there were governments all around the world that have people in power with this very ideology. Now, it might not be under the Meta Liberation name, but the idea is so simple, it's really hard to just squash it entirely. Meta Liberation might be an ideology that is a bit too extreme, but I think that it uncovers the fundamental issues at the core of society in the My Hero Academia universe. With the rapid expansion of quirks and a possibility of singularity coming soon, citizens everywhere are unhappy with the status quo of society and how it's being operated. This is a huge problem in My Hero, and it's going to have to be dealt with at some point. If you're interested in hearing hearing about how this might be resolved and the eventual ending to My Hero Academia. I actually made an entire video on it. It's called Quirk Singularity Doomsday Explained. You can check it out and I go in depth there. I hope you all enjoyed the history of meta liberation in Destro. I think one of Horikoshi's greatest strengths is his ability to take, just one or two panels and really build it out and make an entire past history for this entire society. It's really incredible that he can just put one or two lines here and there, and the entire society has been really brought out into the forefront. I mean, there's a whole history, and it really feels like it has a lot of depth to it. So if you're reading through the manga or watching the anime and you see a one-off panel or a one-off scene, and it just kind of references something really quickly, read it again, watch it again, because it just might be the next big arc in My Hero Academia. But thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you all next class.